I'm Coach Ren, and this is Technique Deep Dive, Bench Press Edition. This is one I've been meaning to do for a while now. It's always been one of my favorite exercises, if not the favorite exercise that I enjoy doing. For the longest time in the gym, it was all about how much you bench pressed. People would get into big circles around the bench. Everybody would take turns seeing how much they could do, and I still see that to this day. Please hit that like button and subscribe for more content. Why would you want to bench press? Well, there's health aspects. There's, of course, the aesthetic piece, wanting to look good, and the strength piece as well. You cannot load another upper body lift as much as the bench press. You're going to build a lot of strength with this as long as you do it correctly. You can benefit from it for years to come. From a health standpoint, you're going to have stronger elbows and shoulders. It's going to work and build a lot of muscle in the upper body, the chest, the shoulders, the triceps, the rotator cuff. They all work together to help move and stabilize the weight as you perform the movement. Over the years, there's been a lot of debate whether or not the bench press has any value or if it's an optimal movement. While, I would agree that there is debate and you could certainly do other movements, I think it still should be a staple in everybody's program, or at least one of the variations that you can do. A lot of people prefer to maybe overhead press, which is another great one. I'll do a technique deep dive at some point on, but I highly recommend that you learn how to do this. Again, whether it's the regular bench press or some sort of variation, because again, you can build so much strength and there's so much value with it that it just should not be left out of your routine. First thing with the bench press and any other exercise for that matter is a proper setup. Now, you'll notice here that I have the very end of the bench lined up with where the bar is. So when I go to roll it forward, which is what I always like to do personally when bench pressing, I get it to the front of the hooks if possible, and then I lift it off from there. This decreases the distance that I have to take it out of the rack and kind of helps save me a little bit of energy for the actual movement. But always have a spotter. I highly recommend that. This can be a dangerous exercise if you're doing it by yourself and you're going somewhat heavy or really heavy. So always have a spotter. Definitely not something you want to mess around with. So very good exercise, but again, should be respected just like anything else in the gym. So line the bar up with the end of the bench, or when you go to lay down, you'll line it up with your eyes. So you're looking straight up at it. If the bench is, say, too far back, which is what a lot of people tend to do, you're going to be looking down at the bench. Then what happens? You go to bench the bar and you hit the hooks. And I've done it before. It's not a great feeling, especially if you don't have a spotter. So line the bench up properly with the bar, and you should maybe see the shadow of the bar right over the bench. So next I'm going to take my grip. So my eyes are lined up under the bar as stated before. And now I'm going to take my thumb, put the very tip of my thumb on the line where it separates the knurling or the rough part of the bar from the smooth part of the bar in the middle. So the tip of my thumb goes right on that line. I straighten my thumb out all the way, and that's where I'll grab the bar. Now, you can play around with a wider grip or a more narrow grip. That is up to you. If you are maybe shorter, you might want to go in a little more narrow. If you're a taller individual with longer arms, you may want to go a little bit wider. But this is a good place to start from at least. That's where I grab the bar. Take my grip, and then I wrap my thumbs around, and I'm ready to go. Now, you'll have some people that advocate for what's called a suicide grip or a false grip, where the thumbs are on the same side of the bar as the fingers. And to that, I'm going to say, unless you're competing and you have a lot of experience, do not risk it. Because I have literally seen somebody in competition drop the bar on their chest and it bounced off them twice before the people were able to catch it. So I don't want to scare anybody out of doing the bench press, but I'm just going to say, wrap your thumb around the bar. Just be on the safe side with it. Again, we want to get as much out of it while keeping the risk to a minimum. With a proper grip setup, now it's time to adjust and get proper posture before I take the bar out of the rack. Always do this before the bar is out of the rack because it's really hard, especially when the weight is heavy, to assume better posture once the weight is resting on your body. So I'm going to lift my chest toward the ceiling. I'm going to squeeze my shoulder blades back and drive my shoulders down away from my ears. So I want my chest elevated as high as I can comfortably without feeling any sort of strain or pain in my lower back. And this is the posture I assume. So again, I start maybe flattened out a bit. I lift my chest. I pull my shoulder blades back and together. I'm kind of pushing the back of my shoulders into the bench. This is the posture you want to assume for the duration of the set, never allowing yourself to collapse. So now I have my grip and my posture set up, and I'm ready to lift the bar out of the rack. I give my spotter a countdown or count up. 1, 2, 3. We'll lift it together and place it over my chest. Always guide the bar to your chest, not over your face or throat for obvious reasons. So now I'm ready to go. I wait for my spotter to let go of the bar, and I take a second or two to feel the weight on my body. Always wait for your partner or your spotter to take their hands off the bar before you begin. If you start, then you're going to not feel the weight until maybe about halfway down. That's going to be a big shocker and could be the difference between getting a rep and not. So from here, from the top, I take a big breath of air in, and I lowered the bar down to my chest. Now I want to tuck my elbows in at about a 45-degree angle. And then as I come up, my arms straighten back out again. So again, a lot of people like to flare the elbows out because they're trying to work on building a bigger chesticles, okay? But while I think that's fine, I prefer a little bit of an elbow tuck to also get my triceps and shoulders involved. If you spend some time building your chest with other things like flies and dips and so forth, you should still feel a good amount of chest recruitment when you do this. So tuck those elbows in towards your body at about a 45-degree angle instead of flaring. I want to talk about the bar path. Since your elbows are tucking, what that is going to do with the bar is force it to go in a curve motion or an arc. So the bar should always start over my shoulders. Again, not my throat or face. The bar starts in a straight line over my shoulders. And as I come down and tuck my elbows, it's going to curve down toward my legs a bit. And I'm going to aim to touch at about the bottom of my sternum. And then as I press back up, it comes back over my shoulders. So it's a subtle arc. It's a subtle horizontal movement that takes place, but it's there. Now, the flatter you are with your body, because remember, we're lifting the chest high, so that's creating a bit of an arch. But the flatter your arch is, the less of a curve there will be. It will be more of a straight line. But I don't want to get into too many details about that. Just understand that there's going to be a slight arc, touch the bottom of the sternum, maybe a little bit higher, before coming back up. And I usually spend the first session or two really focused on touching the same exact spot every time on the chest before getting into more details on the bench. You want to get comfortable with the path, make it look exactly the same every single time, and you'll have a great bench press. Now, speaking of bar path, one of the biggest mistakes I see is an inconsistent or improper bar path or touch point on the chest. So you'll see some people come down and touch like their stomach, or other people come up and touch like near their collarbone. Again, we want to get as consistent as possible, touching the same spot. One trick that I learned was to take my fingers and kind of hit the bottom of my sternum hard for a few seconds, and I'll still feel that. And then I unrack the bar and touch that spot. You can also have your spotter let you know where you should be. Maybe you rest the bar on your chest and they kind of help slide it to the right spot for you. Feel that, and then work on hitting that same spot. The other problem I'll see is lifting of the butt. This is fairly common. So as I come down, if the weight starts to get really heavy, people will kind of bridge as if that's going to help them. So if it might feel like it's going to, but you never want your butt to come up off the bench. Lifting your butt off the bench won't count in competition, but also will make you less stable when you bench press. One variation people like to use sometimes is lifting their feet off the floor. What this does is it makes it harder because you're taking away some stability, so you can't lift as much. You have to lower the weight. I don't really like to do that very often, if at all. I like to keep my feet on the ground and my butt on the bench because, again, in the long run, it's actually going to be more stable and you'll be able to lift more weight safely when doing it that way. Another mistake I'll see is as people press and the weight starts to get heavy, they'll shrug their shoulders. Hopefully you can see that okay. This is going to take tension away from the upper back. What we want, again, is before you even lift the bar out of the rack is to pull the shoulder blades back, drive your shoulders down away from your ears, so the complete opposite of shrugging, and we want to hold that position. If you're finding you're shrugging a bunch and you can't help it, you're going to have to lower your weight for a little while and relearn to bench without the shrug. So check your ego and allow the proper muscles to do the work. Elbow position on the bench press. Again, 45 degrees is what we want. Don't allow them to flare out and put extra pressure on them. Keep them tucked. Now, one problem I'll see, and this is usually more of a mechanical issue than anything, that it might be a technique thing, but you'll see some people that'll come down and one elbow's way in, maybe the bar goes to the side a bit, and then you come back up. Well, for somebody like that, especially if you see it right off, you're going to want to lighten the weight and be very focused, be very conscious of keeping your elbows as symmetrical as you possibly can. So again, slow down, make sure your elbows are even. So say, for example, my right arm is tucking way in. I'm going to need to focus on flaring it out a bit to get them even once again. So whatever correction you need to make, maybe you have your spotter tell you what's happening, or you use some video footage. Whatever you use to fix it, make sure you do it early on so it doesn't become that much harder to fix in the long run. Another issue that takes place when the bar gets heavy is people kicking their legs to come up. Again, this is not necessary and it's going to take away some of your stability. Keep your feet planted firmly on the floor, tuck them back a little bit if needed, and keep them planted. Drive your feet into the floor a bit without bridging, of course, just to keep them stable and flat. Don't want any of this flailing garbage.
Some good variations of the barbell bench press include the dumbbell bench press. This is good if the bar tends to aggravate your shoulders. The dumbbells allow your shoulders to move a little more freely and independently of one another, so you can get a little rotation so it's more comfortable. All the same rules apply. Keep your chest up, abs tight. The dumbbells come up and together as you come up, and then down and apart just outside your chest at the bottom. You can get a little bit deeper and get more chest activation with this variation. The next one is the close grip bench press. Keeping your elbows tucked in tight and your hands in a more narrow grip with your index fingers on that line we talked about earlier. Drive up and place more emphasis on squeezing the triceps for a better lockout of your bench press. If you tend to have a harder time at the top or the second half, that will help. Then we have the incline bench press. This will place more emphasis on the triceps and shoulders. You're going to be at about a 45-degree incline on the bench. You're going to touch more towards your collarbone. As you come up, the bar's going to end up more over your face because of the angle you're at. Again, you still work your shoulders really well. Then finally, we have the paused bench press. This is good if you're weaker at the bottom of the bench. Coming down, you touch your chest still, and you pause, but don't allow the weight to rest on your chest. Keep the weight in your hands and just stop all motion before driving the bar back up and locking it out.
Some basic ideas and principles on programming the bench press. For one, let's start off with volume. How many sets and reps should you do? In terms of reps, if you're working more on building strength, you're going to want to hang out in the 1 to 5 rep range per set. And then if you're working more on hypertrophy or muscle growth, 8 to 15 reps, somewhere in that area, is generally the best place to be. You can set up and do about 3 to 5 sets. Generally speaking, if you're doing the lower volume, you're going to go on the higher end of that. And if you're going with the higher reps, you'll go with maybe 2 or 3 sets. This could say even 2 to 5 reps, 2 to 3 to 5 sets of the bench press in one session. Now, as far as weight goes, if you're going low volume and you're working on your strength, then you're going to want to be in the 85% or higher of your 1 repetition max. So how much weight can you do just one time? Take the percentage of that, and you're going to be in that range, 85 to 95 or close to 100% of your 1 rep max. If you're doing higher repetitions, then the 50 to 75% range is going to be better. Save the 50% range for sets of 10, 12 or more, and 75 will be more around the 8 range. And then finally, frequency. How often should you do the bench press? Well, it really depends on how you're structuring your workouts, how much time you have to dedicate to your training, but 1 to 3 times a week is plenty. There's probably some programs out there that have you do more, but as a beginner or maybe intermediate level lifter, 1 to 3 times a week is more than enough. And even in those 3 sessions, say you were to do bench press variations 3 different times in 1 week, I wouldn't even do the same variation every time. I might do, like, say a Monday, I would do a regular bench press, then on a Wednesday, maybe I would go dumbbell bench press and kind of take some of the weight and stress off my body a bit. You can still go fairly hard with that, but overall it's not going to be as stressful as doing a barbell bench. And then if I wanted to work on some sort of weak area, say do a pause bench press on Friday, I would do that. So I'm not doing the same exact thing every day. I'm working different aspects of the bench press, but you don't need to get that complicated. If you're somebody that's looking to just do this for their general health and get a little bit stronger, maybe look a little better, 1 or 2 times a week is plenty. And you can just vary it up. Again, do just like a regular barbell bench press and maybe do a dumbbell bench press another day a week. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the subscribe button and the like button. It helps me out a ton to make sure I'm not just shouting into the wind, and it just makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside.